Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, but it's too hot. So you guys doing okay? Good morning. So we're gonna skip chapter 3 because it's a complex and needs a lot of labs. So I don't think we can do it. It takes a lot of time. So we decided to go to chapter 4, which is a very important chapter. It talks about configuring storage in file system. So before we start, anybody had any question, any concern? Okay. We still have some people did not join in this morning, but gonna start at 8. And that's the objective of the chapters right here. We talk about describe server storage. Which is sometimes when we talk about storage, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, okay? Because we have a lot of different types of storage. Configure local disks. Doesn't say local disk. Disks, that means you can have more than one disk. And that depends on what? If I have it's a configure local disks. How many disks we can put? That depends on what? What do you think?
The hardware that you're using?
Well, it depends on the controller. How many disks can I put in that board, or if I have host adapter, how many disks I can plug in? For example, if I'm using SCSI drives, so it depends on, because at the end of the day, we're talking about if you direct in, if you put in your disk inside the machine, not outside, inside. Like the traditional way that we're doing, like if you get a PC, it has a multiple, you have a controller, which is like a SATA, and you have multiple ports. You can plug your SATA drive. So that depends on the controller, really, to determine how many you can plug in. In the old days, we used to have an IDE, which is parallel. I don't know if some of y'all maybe remember that wide ribbon cable was 40 pins. So we used to buy a controller with 2 plug-in, and we get the cable, and the cable has, you can connect, it has 2 connectors. Each cable has 2 connectors. That means we were limited only to 4 drives. And some machines has only one IDE port. If you have one IDE port, that means you can plug 2 IDE drives. So that depends on the machine itself. Like the modern machines now, if you have a machine, you take the cover out. Some of them have maybe 3 or 4 plug-in. You can plug, for example, the CD-ROM drive and a couple of hard drives. Now, if you need more drives to attach to your machine, you can get a controller. So you get PCI Express, for example, you can send controller or whatever slots you have available in the motherboard. You can add what we call host adapter. Okay. So that's basically talk about that later. What with virtual disks? we talk about virtual disk, meaning what? Means what's a virtual disk? It's like what? Really? Like a file. It's virtual disk. I'll show you when we create virtual machines. Now we have a virtual disk, basically where we store the information for that virtual machine. Virtual disk means it's not physical, put it that way. And you can describe the file sharing and configure Windows file sharing and secure access to files with permissions. Of course, I think the section 4.4, 4.5, and 4.6 in a way describe, if you look at that, the purpose of having a hard drive for storage. When somebody said, okay, what we need the storage for? And I think they answer the questions in Bulletin 4.4 and 4.5 and 4.6, but we'll talk about them in detail. So when we talk about storage, like in general term, we got a lot of different types of storage. We have a permanent storage and we have temporarily storage, right? We can store information in memory, random access memory, for example, for short term, like as long as that machine has power in it, we can store information in it. And we have some types of storage that store the information permanently, means even they don't have a power, they still can save that information in there. So you need to know the difference between the two too. I'm sure you do. This is from A+. And that's what they said on this slide. The need for faster, bigger, and more reliable storage is growing as fast as technology can keep up. Yeah, that's true. But some of y'all, you guys, you didn't experience the old technology. I mean, now when you go buy a machine or a computer from any of the local stores, you ask the salesperson, okay, how many hard drive, how much, what's the size of the hard disk? They give you 1 terabyte, like 500 gig, everything in a gig and terabytes. In my days, I bought my first 10 meg hard drive. It cost me $500. And guess what? The 10 meg hard drive, you cannot connect it to the PC. I have to buy some kind of controller to put it in there. So now it's true. And the reason why, I mean, long time ago, I mean, everybody remember DOS, disk operating system. Everything will be stored back then on floppy disk, which was like 360 something K. And then they went to the 3.5 disk, which is 1.4 or whatever, 1.4 meg. Okay. So now we talk about storage in the gigabyte. Why we went from smaller storage to now a lot of stuff? And the reason why, because the way we do business now is different. We depend on computers. We store everything in computers. Everywhere you go, they scan. You go to Sam's, Costco, Walmart, blah, blah, blah. They scan items. Boom, 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 boom. Inventories. So you need the storage for all this. And it's not only we scan data. We scan text. We scan pictures, videos, and stuff. This is scary. The way technology is going. And the reason now, I don't know if you hear about big data. It's a big data is basically we collect all kind of data, good and bad and whatever. That's why you see cameras all over places. Information we like from Facebook, from all this social media. All this stuff is they study the behavior of some individuals or your habits for marketing purposes. Did you notice, like when you talk about something, let's say you go today and talk about, well, you talk with your friend or your wife or your girlfriend or whatever. You say, well, I'm looking for a refrigerator or something. What good refrigerator and we need to buy? You notice on the next few minutes or the next day, you get some kind of ad or pop-up talks about refrigerator. Where that information came from? They collect data. They analyze the data so they know for marketing purpose and other purposes. So when you collect that data, where is it going to go? It needs to be stored somewhere. Then they run some kind of algorithm to study the behavior of certain people or like for example, or habits or what they're looking for. So what I'm trying to say is the need for storage is even going to grow more and more and more. So we have a lot of need to store information. And that's on this chapter to say the following sections cover some basic of server storage. What is it and why we need it and common method for accessing storage. We already pretty much cover basically what is the storage. What is the storage? Basically, simply is to store information. Why we need to store the information? Well, to use it later or to analyze it. I mean, if you don't need the information, why you want to keep it? If you don't want to retrieve it later or analyze the data, why you need it to save it? But that's the purpose. We need the storage basically to use that information, to edit it, to add to it, to analyze it, to whatever purpose. So, how you access it is multiple ways to access it. Now, you can access it like, for example, you can attach it to a USB, you can attach it to different interfaces, what I'm trying to say. And also, you have it on the cloud. You can do it through cloud base. I'm sure most of y'all have what? Have Google Drive or stuff like that. This is like on the cloud or iCloud. You save your information. So it's different ways to access it. And I think in this one here, that's what they're talking about. So the main reason is data can be written to and retrieved from. Oh, thank you. Man, I'm so bad with this one. Sorry, I got my sinuses killing me this morning, but okay. So basically, we need the information. We need storage to write to the storage and to retrieve it for later use. So, question: how was life before all this? How you used to write long time ago? How we used to write a letter or something? We use what?
Floppy disk.
Even before the computer, we used to use a typewriter. Anybody remember a typewriter?
Oh, Jesus, just before my time.
That was long time ago, right? That was, I mean, I bought one, like a heavy one, used like in the 80s or something like that. It was like 100 and something used. I mean, this was heavy one. And if you mess up a letter, God help you. I don't know how to correct it. So it was a mess. Now you can go use Microsoft Word, boom, 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 and has all this fancy. If you misspell something, it'll tell you misspell it. If you don't want to repeat the same words so many times, you go and give you alternative. You save it, then you can edit it, and later on you can add to it. You can do whatever you want. So it makes life a lot easier. So the question is, for long-term storage types, we use, for example, USB memory sticks. This is flash drives. In the old days, we used to use a floppy. Now we use a flash drive, which is memory sticks. I remember one time I used to go to LSU when I was doing my master's degree. I was supposed to have a presentation. So I did the PowerPoint. I put them on my floppy disk, 3.5 floppy disk. And I wasn't noticing. Long time ago, they used to give us a name tag. I was back then at T.H. Harris. So I put a name tag in my pocket, and guess what? The name tag has magnet in it. So it wiped out the whole disk. So there was a mess. Now, I mean, at 3.5, now you can use the USB. You can send send it as an email. You can retrieve it. I mean, there's different ways to get the storage. Of course, we have the secure digital SD for cameras and some other media, CDs and DVDs. Even CDs, nobody uses them anymore. Anybody still using CD? And the reason why we don't use them anymore, because they are limited in capacity. We used to have also all kind of types of drives. I remember they make a little drive. I forgot the name of it. Jazz drive or all that stuff with a special media in it. Anyway, magnetic tape, we use that for backup. And some people or some organization, I don't know if they still use it, but this is like a huge tape, especially when you go to the bank, when you used to use the AS 400 mainframe made by IBM. They use magnetic tape for backup. Or they use little small cartridges. I think I bought one time, and the capacity was 40 gig or so. That's the largest I've ever seen, 4 gig. But the problem is magnetic tape, you cannot retrieve the information right away. Why? Because it's recorded sequentially. Remember when you used to buy like cassette tape to play songs in your machine, in your car? So if you want a song, you have to rewind the tape or fast forward. Over here, you cannot access the data. So if you back up on magnetic tape, you have to what? Go and restore the whole tape. Now, solid state drives, this is becomes popular. SSD, this is very popular now, and this is what replaced the IDE or the HDD or the IDE card or the hard disk drive. So as we see, we have different types of media to save our data. And also, the stuff is not mentioned here. That's the stuff you can do on the cloud, like Google Drive, and so on. Okay. Okay, the server storage is based on hard disk drives. Also, solid state drive are gaining popularity. It's not gaining popularity. I don't know when they print that book. But if you go buy right now any machine or any server, you're not going to have IDE interfacing. Okay, this is gone long time ago. Especially when you do the server. The server back then and still used is basically we would call a SCSI drive. The SCSI drive is basically a lot faster, and you can put more drives at one time. Because especially on server, because on server you need more drives, and the only technology that support 15 or 16 or whatever number of drives was the SCSI controller, because they can daisy chain, and each device connected to that SCSI controller, they used to have something called LUN. It's just like a logical ID. Okay. So, but IDE is gone long time ago. Now, what's the difference between HDD, hard disk drives, and SSD? Well, some people say, okay, the hard drive has mechanical components in it, and the SSD is like a memory. Okay, it's like a flash memory. That's the SSD. But what impacts is gonna do in your machine? This is gonna require or requires a less power or more power. When you have mechanical parts, you have to move the mechanical parts. What do you need? You need more power. With the SSD, you will have less power. You need less power. So it's not only on performance, it's not only SSD is a lot faster than the hard disk, also you save on power. And usually when you connect the SATA, it depends on the controller. You can use regular SATA interface, or you use the Express. That's PCI Express. That's what they call it, PCI Express interface. Okay. And the disadvantage of having hard disk or hard drive back then, because they have a mechanical components, so you cannot move, or if you want to move your computer, you have to be super carefully, because if you move it fast or whatever, you don't handle it right, you're gonna damage what we call the heads. The heads of, because whenever you write or read information to the drives, has like a head. You remember that like turntable when you play music, has like a little needle on top? That's what makes to read the song. And the same thing with the hard drive. It has heads that reads the information. So any shock to the disk or moving, or it's going to cause damage to that head. So that's why you have to be super careful. And thank goodness we don't have them anymore. I guess some people maybe still use them, but I never seen them. Especially on new machines now, if you go buy one, you're not gonna find HDD. But of course, if you go to eBay, I got a friend of mine a long time ago. He has some machine that he can do T-shirts and all kind of stuff. So he used to have a DOS machine, and that was So unable to repair his machine, I have to order from eBay or whatever, buy him an old machine with DOS in it and all this to be compatible with his machine. But HDD is no longer available in the market, okay? Okay, they talk about reason for storage. Well, we got a lot of reasons why we need to store it. So, operating system file. The OS itself required a good bit of storage, and we've seen that from chapter 1. In chapter 1, it'll give you some kind of a table like Windows 2016, what's the minimum hard disk needed, and all that stuff. So we need to store the operating system somewhere temporarily in order for the machine to boot up and to use it. And also, we need to use it for page file. What's a page file? And some people call it a virtual memory. Virtual memory means it's not a physical memory. It's not physical random access memory. And this is basically a storage on the drive, on a hard drive, regardless if that drive is SATA or HDD. Okay. And you have a lot of different use for this page file. And long time ago, the rule of thumb, whenever you need to create a page file, you're gonna say, okay, how much RAM I have on my machine, and you multiply by 1.5 or 2. Okay, that was the rules back then. But now, they have some kind of, the operating system will handle it. Okay, so that handle the size of your page file. They have something called, and the reason for that one, basically, if your machine has what we call memory dump, okay, so use a virtual memory and to store dump data after a system crash. So that's what you use it for. And also, there's another use for it. Like, for example, if you run in multiple applications at one time on your machine and you run out of physical memory, then you can use the virtual memory. And this is another use for it. And that's why it tells you the machine that use the page file a lot. I think that was one question on the A+ exam. What step you want to take to avoid using page file a lot? Basically, you need to add more physical memory. So the other reason why we need a storage or login file, especially on server. And that file, it grows dynamically as needed. So what is in there? Like, for example, if you want to know what happened to your drive or the status of your machine, like if you want to go see event viewer or any kind of, the log files basically it looks like the black box in the airplane. When they crash, you go search for that box to see what caused the problem. So all the problems that goes wrong in the machine is supposed to be logged, the log files, including some kind of security, like audits and all that stuff. So it goes on the log files. So I think the other need for virtual machines, of course, and especially when we talk about cloud computing now and on virtualization, that becomes a very, very important to have a to have a space for the virtual machines. Because where are you going to install the virtual machines. So you need some kind of space, and this is pre-planned, especially on the in the enterprise environment. So let's say I have a lab, or I have a building or a company. Let's look. Okay, first question: how many virtual machines do we need? Well, we need such number of virtual machines. Then you need to calculate, okay, how much storage do we need for just storing the virtual machines? Then how much data we need to put. So all of this pre-calculated. Why? Because we're going to learn later on the virtual environment. For labs, like what we're doing now, it's okay. We can store the virtual machines on the local disk. But for the enterprise environment, we store the virtual machine on SAN. What's a SAN? SAN is a storage area network. Okay. Of course, you have database storage. The storage requirements vary. How are you going to determine how much storage you need for the database? Can you pre-estimate it? What do y'all think? First of all, what's a database? Consists of what? What makes database? When you go to the, for example, anywhere, hospital, DMV, or any places, or Social Security, whatever, what they tell you. The first question they ask you what?
Are you in the database?
Huh? What are you saying? They said, let me look for your
I said,
record.
are you in the database?
Yeah, or if you are in the database.
Which means that are you in
So basically, you can pre-estimate because the database basically consists of files, and in the file you have records. So you need to say the size of that record, and you say how many records we're going to have. 5,000, 5 million, whatever. So we can pretty much estimate it. I mean, it's not a big deal because why? Because we can always add storage, so it's no big deal. But you can estimate it. And also we can use it for documents, might be the largest use of this space today. Documents and documents. Because you hear that word a lot. Well, we have an event at the school and somebody did something or something. Did you document it? So this is the first thing they ask you, documents. So documents we store, I mean, every day people either write in files, they write in information, letters, whatever, we use it for documents. So that big use for documents. Okay. Now the big question, how we are going to access the storage? And that's the answer right here. There are 3 broad categories of storage access methods, which are local storage and direct attached storage, DAS. Direct means what? Means is directly connected to your machine. Okay, that's a local storage. Directly attached, maybe with USB, maybe with SAN, not SAN, NAS. Anybody familiar with NAS, like the iOmega and other brand names. Basically, it has little box. It has a built-in drives, RAIDs, whatever. And it has its own operating system. You put them on the network, and you can access through your network or your USB interface. Anyway, we're going to talk about each one of them. And we have the network attached storage, which is NAS, network area storage, or SAN, storage area network. Now, for enterprise environment, this is very important. The storage area network, virtualization and enterprise. Sorry. This is very popular. So SAN in the virtualization environment is very, very, very popular. And actually, when you talk about SAN, you need a special engineer for that. That's a special have specialties, like, for example, people who take certification in managing a data center. So they need to know a lot about storage, which is SAN in general. Okay. I think we used to deal with a company called EM Square, then Dell bought them as a storage, but you can Google a couple of companies now. The technology in like a couple of years is amazing how much enhanced that just the SANs. So we went from SAS to flash drive to memory to all kind of stuff. Okay, so talk about local storage, which is storage media with a direct exclusive connection to the computer system board through a disk controller. And that's basically when you see, when you open your machine, you can see a little small cable attached to your disk, and one end connected to the disk, the other end is connected to the motherboard. So that part of the motherboard, that's what they call it, controller, where it's connected. And that's what they say, almost always inside the computer case, which is true. And usually refers to hard disk drives or SSD instead of CD or DVDs. Provide rapid and exclusive access. Disadvantage, only the system mode is installed has direct access to the storage media. So basically what he's saying, if you have two computers at home, and one machine has like 2 gigabyte or 2 terabytes of disk storage, and the other machine has, let's say, 200 gig. So what you have on your machine with 2 terabytes only can be accessed from that particular machine. Now, of course, if you share something, people can access, but it's directly attached to that. That's why in the virtual environment, to create some kind of cluster and to create redundancy, okay, you have to have what we call common storage for multiple servers to achieve that. And that's basically what they tell you about the disadvantage. Direct attached storage, which is similar to local storage, but can also refer to one or more HDD in enclosure with its own power supply. Yeah, you can use a external drive. A long time ago, we used to have a lot of them, and it has its own power supply. It's like a heavy one. You put it next, you plug it in through a USB or so, and now they start designing them with without the power supply because they get the power from the USB. So they change it. a DAS device with its own enclosure and power supply can usually be configured as disk array, such as RAID configuration. You can do that too. Some DAS devices have multiple interfaces so that more than one computer can access the storage medium simultaneously. Yeah, like I have on my machine now, I have a NAS. I connected to a server and I'm connected to my machine right here. So if I want to access it, I just put the IP address for it, 168.12. I can use it as an FTP server. See that? I used to have that iOmega stuff, and I access through my network. See that? And you can put whatever you want on here. You can save it, whatever you want. Just to give you an example. And by the way, this box, it's like a square box, has 3 hard drives. It has RAID 5 in it. And like they described, has its own power supply. And you can put them on the network, and you can use it as an FTP server. So people can access from anywhere. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And that's what NAS is. Network attached storage. It has an enclosure, power supply, slots of multiple. A friend of mine, he bought one. The one I have right here, it has, I don't have, it has SATA drives, but doesn't have the SSD. So my friend, he bought one with SSD drives. I mean, he put movies on it, and he has his own Netflix, you know. But it's fast. But what I'm trying to say on here, you can configure it, and you can with RAID if you want to, if you have multiple disks, and you can access it from anywhere. It's like an FTP server, and you can share files if you want to, or transfer, whatever. So an FTP server is able to access it. You need to have some kind of user account and a password to access the information. And this is very popular now for some people, like home use or small offices, so they can store all kind of information in it, and for backup. Also, they use it for backup. Okay, this is the most popular one, like I said, especially when you deal with server with virtualization. And they use a high-speed network technology to give server fast access to large amount of shared disk storage. So let's see. I don't know if I can draw something. Yeah. I guess. This is your server here, and that's your storage over here. Storage here basically has a lot of drives. That's a rack, basically. It's like almost 6 feet racks of storage. There's a lot of stuff. So in the middle over here, of course, you have, for example, high fast switch or something like that. Okay, special high fast. Like you're talking about 40 gig transfer rate or 50. So and some people they do, and this one has different types of interface. They use either fiber channel or iSCSI connector to connect the storage to the server. Okay. And usually they have certification for that, which is deals with data centers. Okay. So this server, we have some servers like a blade server, if you want to call it. Each slot is like a server by itself. And sometimes you have multiple connections for redundancy and all kind of stuff in here, or for to enhance the bandwidth. Okay. So that's basically, this is your SAN, and this is your servers, which is blade server, and this is basically the high-end switch or device that give you fast transfer rate to access back and forth the storage. So high tech. So most common network technology use SANs are, let's see, change this one here. Our fiber channel and SCSI, iSCSI. Fiber channel is very complex to configure, but if you want to specialize in data center, they teach you all kind of stuff like fiber channel, the difference between fiber channel and iSCSI. iSCSI is easier to use, so, but fiber channel is faster, but it's very complex. Okay. So use SAN, use the concept of logical unit number, LUN, to identify each unit of storage. Okay, so because we have, you're talking about the server right here, the racks. Maybe you have about 100 disks or whatever. A lot of hard drives in here. So when you're trying to save stuff, we need to know how to access it. So this is how they identify it, by logical unit number, LUN. And what's LUN is to identify a unit of storage. So LUN is logical reference point to a unit of storage that could refer to an entire array of disks, a single disk, or just part of a disk. Because what we do sometimes in this server here, we have a lot of disks. So we can select what disk, we can make them like, put them on a pool, okay? And put like 3-4 disks, for example, put them on a pool, and from the pool, we can create a virtual disks. It's a little complex. I think we have one chapter deals with this, so you will have an idea what we're talking about. Question. It looks like this, but I don't like this picture. It doesn't look modern. I've never seen a beige tower for a long time ago. Yeah, this is the SAN. It's more complex than this. And that's the high-end switch I was telling you about. And the idea, see the idea here, what's the main idea? You see, we have 1, 2, 3 servers. They use the same, they have access to common storage. So that's what helps to create redundancy and to create high availability. Cisco, they have a special types of switch. I think they call it Nexus switch. If you Google it, it's not bad. I think $9,000 or $12,000 for that switch. Can you buy that, DeRusso? Only $10,000. Yeah. If you want to Google, you can see a lot of research for SAN switch. You can see now what they do. For example, Dell, they give you a box. In that box, it's a multi-blade server, and it has a built-in SANs and all the connections for to access. You don't need all that stuff. It's all, everything is built in one box. And this is really good to run like one lab or something like that. That will be ideal. Okay. Okay. So, how you configure local disk? Did you get a chance to cover all this material in Windows 10? I'm sure you've seen some of them.
Yeah, there's a couple ways.
Did you open the machine, like inside the machine in A plus, and you've seen how it's connected to the hard drives and all that stuff? So this is really old concept, but I guess it's part of the chapter. So you have the disk drive, which is physical component, with the disk interface connect and power connected. So what makes the disk different types is the interface, not just a little flat shape. It's how you connect the device or the drive to the controller. And this is basically what we mean by the interface, because we have a lot of different interface to connect drive. And the most popular one is the SATA right now. So the volume, which is a logical unit of storage that can be formatted with the file system. What's the common file system we use today? Most popular file system? NTFS.
NTFS.
That's right. So this drive can contain one or more volumes. So basically, whenever you put your disk in there and you install the operating system, it's going to give you an option to use the whole volume or to select like a chunk of it. So if you use a chunk of it, I mean the whole drive, then it's going to format it. And that's what some people do. They install the operating system first, then after they install the operating system, they go to disk management after, and they can partition it to a different space. It's good to do partitions because this way you separate your operating system files from the data, from applications, blah, blah, blah. And especially now, what people do, for example, they buy SSD drive, because SSD drive comparing to the mechanical drives is more expensive. So mechanical drive, you can buy 1 terabyte now maybe for $50-$60. Okay. If you want to buy 1 terabyte of SSD, it's gonna maybe about $200 or so. And now it's cheap compared to a couple of years ago. So what they do, they buy 100 gig SSD and they put the operating system just to give them fast boot. And they store everything else on the other one. Okay. But the problem is, every time they install an application or whatever, it default to the C drive, which is the 150. And after a few installation, your C drive is full and your machine becomes slower and slower and slower. So if you want to use that method, you need to make sure whenever you install application, you point it to the second drive. So that makes sense? Formatting, we know the format you have to organize your disk to accept to make it ready to store data on it. And we have the most popular one we use NTFS, like we said. Okay. They talk about this capacity. We measure in hundreds of gigabytes, which is, if you ask that question 20 years ago, we said, no, not gigabyte, megabyte. But now we talked about gigabytes, especially if you deal with SSD. If you're not dealing with SSD, you say terabytes. Why is that? Because you get terabytes in SSD, it's a little bit more expensive than the other one. Okay, factors that affect the speed of hard drive. Disk interface technology, like we talked about, is it HDD? Is it connected to PATA, which is parallel ATA, or which is known by IDE, or is connected by SCSI or SATA? So it depends. And the speed, basically the rotation speed. The rotation server should have an HDD with a minimum speed 72 RPM, revolution per second. And most of this is whenever you go shop or research for drive, you're gonna see the speed. 72, the 72 RPM drive is gonna be way cheaper than the 10 and the 15. And that's why we used to use a SCSI, because the SCSI drive we used to buy, they have 15,000 RPM, which is way faster than the other ones. And some speed they have on 500 something, 5,000 something. So the other factor you need to look for cache. So amount of cache memory installed, 32 to 64 megabyte cache size are common for server class drives. If, only if, you want to put your all your data and everything on that server, if you're not using virtualization and all that stuff. Okay, so it's a good idea to go to research about different types of drives and the different speed and prices and amount of cache. Okay, and I'll give you some kind of idea why this drive is $50 versus another drive for $90 or so. It's something, it must be something different. And that's why a lot of people ask, okay, what drive we should buy? Well, it depends on the spec. I'm sure some brand names are more reliable than others, but you always look also for a specification. On the recent year or two, I've been buying a lot of Samsung 500 gig SSD. The last time I bought 1 terabyte, they put them on special. Then the next week we went to buy some more. They raised the price again. So I don't know how much is it now. Okay, Windows installation should be on a separate disk from data. That's what we talked about. You don't mix oranges with apples and bananas. So it's a good idea for performance reason and for data recovery reasons to separate your files. So basically, whenever you install your operating system, you can install it in a different volume or different partition. An SSD is a good choice for Windows installation. Why? Because whenever you want to boot your machine, you don't want to wait forever. So that will give you a fast boot if you use SSD. That's why I was telling you, if you cannot afford high, like high capacity SSD drive, you can buy 150 gig for maybe $30 or so, and you can install the operating system on the SSD, and the rest of the application and data you can put them on a regular hard disk. The page file should be on its own disk if possible. Yeah, the page file, what you can do, if you have an old drive somewhere and you can use it, yeah, plug it in there and you can use it for a page file. That would be ideal. An SSD is also a good choice for the page file. Use RAID as a fault tolerance option. It will combine multiple disks to make a single volume. Okay, that's the question for you. In order to do that, using RAID as a fault tolerance option, will combine multiple disks to make a single volume. What do I need to do? Suppose we have all these drives available. Plug into computer. What's the first step I need to do? I need to change the disk from what to what? Let's see who's going to answer that question. We need to change the disk from basic to dynamic. Remember that? Where's my disk management? Right here. So if I'm going to combine different drives together, I need to change from a basic to dynamic. Okay, see, this is, I have drives here, it's basic, and this is basic. So if I'm going to combine volumes from each disk, I need to change to dynamic. Okay, I need to go from here to dynamic and here to dynamic in order to do that. Okay, so we talked about the speed, the capacity, and now we're going to talk about the interface, the disk interface. Disk interface, basically, when you get your disk, where do you want to plug it in? So you have to, depends on the types of the disk. So the common types of disk interface, we have the SATA, and this is common in your own machine. Like right now, if you go to your machine, your computer, if you bought it maybe a couple of years ago or now, it's a modern one, it's SATA. SAS, we use it for it's on the server, okay? And a SCSI. SCSI, we used to use it like, you remember that big tower we used to have at the room? It's a big Dell tower. That's what I use a SCSI. The SCSI, it's very, 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 it was very fast. This is like we're talking about 15 RPM. And it's not only that, this one and this one allow you to do hot swappable. So basically, when you do your RAID, if one drive goes bad, you don't have to shut down the server. You just take it out and put a new one. And you can rebuild, restore that RAID. So you don't lose your data. That's what I'm trying to say. And you don't have to turn your machine off. Okay. Serial ATA drives, which is SATA, have replaced parallel ATA. We know that. I have tons of these. I don't know what to do with them. Some people said they have little gold in them, so you give them to some people, they melt them, and I don't know what to do. So the advantages: fast enough transfer times and small cable size. The PTA, it was a long time ago, and they have a problem because the ribbon is about 2 inches wide, and it used to cause a lot of problem in the machine that blocked the airflow, and it's slow. So now they came with the SATA. It's like the cable is like same maybe size as the Ethernet or so. So it's okay. So it improve a lot the airflow. And that's what they say, advantage faster transfer times and smaller cable size. SATA drives are inexpensive, fast, and reliable. And they use the Canon standard 3.2, supports speed up to 16 gigabit. Okay, you need to be careful. Gigabit per second, not byte, bit per second. Mostly readily available device supports SATA 2.2 or SATA 3.0. I think they have a table about all the SATA version and the transfer rate for them. Question about this at this point? Looks like you guys taking a nap or studying for the next test. So I was looking at your grade book, and I've seen a few people didn't do the labs. Okay, that's extra point in your you can gain. Okay, to improve your grades. So please do your assignments. Go do your assignments. Is there any reason why some of y'all did not do any of the assignments or labs? I have a lot of people. I mean, I have hundreds, which is good, but they have like 5 or a few people. They're not doing it. Is there any reason why?
I'm admitting not one of them.
Why is that?
I have a lot of stuff going on with the family and stuff like that too. That's in the background, so trying to get free time is a little tough for me.
Okay, so make sure you catch up with it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any question about what we covered today? So we're gonna end it right here if you don't have a question. So give you a few times for the next class. You have a test. It's gonna be online test, and it's gonna be and you have a what do you call a skill test. Okay.
Are we going to be actually having the class, or is the time for class going to be allotted for the test?
It's gonna be for the test. On the skill, you can have your time on it. I'm gonna give you like 2 hours or so. And for some reason, if you have a problem, send me an email, because I'm gonna open my email because we have some issues with the Cisco assignments on the time zone. I set it up on Central, but still like 8 hours ahead or less, so I can adjust the time. So if you have a problem not seeing the test is not available, just shoot me an email so I can correct it.
Yes, sir.
And that's basically after you finish the test, the skill test, you upload it to the assignment under the same name. I think the name, let's see what I name it. I forgot what I named it. Let's see. It calls VLAN skills. If you wanna, if you want, okay, if you want, what we can do also, we can start the WebEx for the first 5 minutes, and you can do your test. I can explain what you need to do if you have a question. You rather do that, or you rather take the test and you know what to do? I'm gonna open it.
I think as long as I guess there's like steps or requirements that you want from it, I think
Yeah, you go to the assignments. I'm gonna list the skills on the files folder, the topology, and the instructions what to do. It's on the packet tracer. Step number 1, you do this. Step number 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. It's listed. So you go to the assignments, and under the assignment, you need to go to the files folder, download the VLAN skills topology, and you do your skills. You do that after you finish the online. I'm going to give you enough time to do it, to do the skills. And if anybody have problems, just send me an email. Sounds good?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Have a
sir.
good luck to you on your test. And let
Thank
me know
you.
if you have a question.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
You.
Nobody speaking?